Okay, for the battery charging certification here, this is our battery charger unit, is the cart itself. This is a smart charger, so we're going to set this up, input our settings and display modes, start the charge mode, and then the machine is going to take over and charge this battery to its 100% capacity, controlling the charge rate to make it the best for the battery. So it is an automated. Before we connect the charger, we want to figure out what type of battery we are dealing with. Is it a lead acid battery? Is it an AGM battery, a gel cell battery, etc.? Inspect the battery. Let's get our terminals clean so we've got good connections. Make sure the case is not damaged, that the battery doesn't have any physical problems before we try and put a charge to it. Okay, next, connecting our clamps. We're going to connect our clamps in the order that we would connect the battery to a vehicle. So the first clamp that we're going to attach is going to be our positive clamp. We're going to want to put that on our positive terminal. To identify your battery terminals, there's symbols on the battery. I'm going to try and get the clamp on there so that it has the best bite. Got good contact with all the teeth, or as many teeth as we can get. Okay, now for the certification test purposes, they do have this double extra super safe measure where they want us to use an extension to connect our ground cable. That's going to eliminate any sparks that are happening away from the battery, or keep them away from the battery. But if we hook up our battery charger correctly, so I have a jumper cable here connected to nothing, and I'm going to use as my extension. So for testing purposes, they want us to connect to this jumper. Any sparks that could possibly happen are going to happen away from the battery itself. So this would be how we would connect our negative side. Leave that down here on the ground. Once we would power the charger on, we could charge the battery this way, leaves through the ground, through our jumper cable, and back to the machine. Okay, theoretically that is the safest way to do this. So for testing purposes, we require an extension cable. It has to be at least 4 or 6 gauge in diameter to extend our negative clamp away from the battery. If we hook up a charger correctly, meaning it's not plugged into the wall yet, there shouldn't be any sparks anyways. So connecting to vehicles, connecting to batteries in the vehicle, we're going to connect straight to the battery posts. We're not going to use this. It will be when the battery's out of the vehicle only. Okay, so now we have our connections on the battery, jumper cable. Now is when we can go ahead and plug the machine in. We plug it in last to avoid any unwanted discharge of power. If the machine were to accidentally turn on right now, it would just start charging the battery. So that's why we go clamps first and power last. Go and plug this into our 120 volt outlet. No extension cords. Okay, make sure this goes straight into a wall outlet so we have a good source of power for this battery charger to pull from. If this is an engine start mode, we could be putting as much as 300 amps into a system. So we need a good power outlet plug to plug this into. No extension cords or power reels. Okay, we've got our clamps in place. We have the unit plugged into the wall. We can go ahead and power on the machine with the main power switch right here on the front panel. That's going to give us an initial voltage reading here. You can see it's 12 volts is what this battery is showing right now. We can change this display mode with our display mode button and cycle through. The second option would be percentage of battery, and that 12.0 battery is about 50% charged. If we had this hooked up to a vehicle that had the engine running, we could see how the alternator is performing by switching it to alternator percentage. So we have three different display modes: volts, percentage of battery charge, and percentage of alternator. Next, we're going to go ahead and select what voltage the battery is. We can charge 6 and 12 volt batteries, and we can boost 24 volt batteries, but we cannot charge 24 volt systems to 100% capacity. So make sure you know that for the test. So we're going to put it on 12 volt. This is a 12 volt automotive battery. The battery type is a standard AGM or gel cell. Okay, any Optimas, would be AGM batteries, but this is a standard lead acid battery, so we're going to bump that up. And now we decide what charge rate we want to start the battery off on. This is an automatic smart charger, so we can start whatever charge rate we want. The battery charger is going to examine the battery and adjust the charge rate as necessary for whatever is healthiest for the battery. So for this battery, we can see our charge rates are over here. It's a good piece of information also on your front panel. Maintain mode applies 4 amps of charge. Fast rate applies 15 amps of boost, applies 16 amps. And our engine start mode down here at the bottom, if we wanted to start a car that had a dead battery using the charger to supply power, could supply up to 300 amps of current. So we're going to go ahead and select fast mode. And we can begin the charging process by pressing the start and stop button. We're always going to begin and end the charging process with this button. So if I press start, we'll see this screen change as we start feeding 15 amps to our battery. Got our charge light, voltage skyrocketed. And now the charger is giving us a SUL message, which stands for sulfated. It's detected that this battery internally is sulfated and is not taking a charge correctly. So we would want to test this battery further and see what the problems are with the battery itself. If this was a functioning battery, we would see this light switch to green over here when we reached 100% charge. And when we're in maintenance mode and we're cycling on and off, keeping that battery at 100%, we'll see that blinking as well. Okay, when we're done charging a battery, we come back to this and it says it's 100% charged, ready to be reinstalled. The first thing we're going to do, you're going to see this again, push our start stop button to end the charging process. It's the first thing we do when we're done charging. Okay, shuts our charge off. Now we can go ahead and turn the unit off with our main power switch. Before we disconnect our clamps, we're going to unplug the unit. If we remove the power source, then there's Before we disconnect the clamps, we're going to unplug the unit. That way there's absolutely no chance that the clamps could become energized. We're going to disconnect our clamps in the same order that we would disconnect clamps from a vehicle or disconnect a battery from a vehicle. So we're going to move the ground first. Remember, we've got this jumper cable extension, so we're going to go ahead and disconnect here first, away from the battery. Ground clamp, negative clamp first. It's in reverse order of installation. We put this clamp on first, so we're going to remove it last. Another fun fact, something you need to know for the test for some reason. These clamps are 90 inches in length, so they reach 90 inches. Something to log, because you're going to see that again. Okay, so we want to end it by coiling our clamps back up. Return the machine like we found it. Like so. We'll go ahead and coil up our ground and our power cord as well. And now we don't run the risk of pinching the clamps and running them over, damaging them. Return the machine like you found it. Okay, so that's how we connect and disconnect our battery charger. Pretty straightforward operation, like I said. The menus flow from left to right. Program in your battery size, type, and charge rate. And we can begin and end the charge process with the start and stop button. Remember that there is no manual mode on these chargers. These are automatic smart chargers. So they will always end the charging process for you and keep batteries from getting overcharged. Alright, I hope that was informative for you. Next certification is going to be 3 of 3. and that is going to go through our battery tester, our diagnostic tool here, which we are going to use to test batteries. We can see, why is this battery showing up as sulfated? Okay, what are the problems? Does it need to be replaced? We can test their capacity, but that tester also allows us to test our alternator, our charging system, and do some initial checks on our starting system to see what those performance numbers are as well. So you can give yourself a quick electrical diagnostic on a vehicle all in one tool. Okay. All right, I hope to see everybody. I'll catch you next lab with our diagnostic tool.